Apple's lower cost laptops are also their most popular, with the MacBook Air being their #1 bestseller, and it may not surprise you to hear that the #2 bestseller is, the base model MacBook Pro. However, that was at the former $1,300 price tag, with this new M3 MacBook Pro replacing it at a higher $1,600 starting price point. Of course, that model does come with more power, a better screen, a new design with more ports, and yeah, it is a more premium product, but it is priced pretty far away from something like the entry-level MacBook Air, and it is $300 more expensive than that old M2 MacBook Pro, which kind of has me questioning, who is this MacBook Pro really for? And is this Apple's biggest mistake in terms of a pricing strategy? Or really, when you add up the entire value of this MacBook Pro, is this possibly the best laptop that Apple has ever made? Now, we all know the MacBook Pro has a lot of use cases and it connects us to a wider world. And one of the things I've been doing lately is checking out the connected AI power world of Metasites, where you can explore a bustling metropolis, listen to music, or play a few games while conversing with inhabitants that aren't just regular NPCs with scripted responses, but an actual AI personality that lives and works in the city that shares unique and interesting conversations. And you can have your own unique experiences by visiting shops for a luxury boutique shopping experience and browse the unique car collections and then customize your own car to your liking, complete with the perfect paint job, and then take it for a test drive through this metropolis. I love taking in the views of the big city behind the wheel of the car, and then glancing up through the sunroof and just getting an amazing view of all of the tall buildings that fill the city. Or I can take on the views of the amazing galleries that is available in Metasites, with views that just aren't possible in a regular gallery. Metasites is packed with so many things to do and different areas to visit, like your own personal hub complete with your own home in the suburbs, and relaxing areas with vibrant landscapes where you can enjoy tranquil moments like a beautiful sunset. This is an entirely new platform full of exciting developments and unique experiences, so unleash the power of Xsolla Metasites through the link in the description and be the first to get a chance to explore a unique virtual experience, interact with NPCs based on GPT, and check out hyper-realistic graphics on Unreal Engine 5, and thank you to Xsolla Metasites for sponsoring this video. Okay, so we kind of talked about how this model got refreshed, and I think one of the things you have to look out for with any Apple model refresh is, did they add any value to the, increased price of this product, or did they just increase the price out of pure greed? Well, it's easy to look at the outgoing model and the new model and see that these Macs are quite different. That's because this new MacBook Pro has more in common with the more expensive $2,000 version than it does with the previous M2 Touch Bar version. The entire body has been reworked to have flatter sides, overall it has a thicker appearance, and it is slightly heavier in weight, but it comes with a lot of benefits, right? It has more ports, with an expanded port selection for a MagSafe charging port, an SD card slot, an HDMI port, and still retains the 2 Thunderbolt ports from the previous model. Open up the MacBook Pro and you're no longer greeted by a touch bar on the top. It's just a regular keyboard with a full row of function keys, just like every other Mac in Apple's lineup now. So this MacBook is no longer the ugly duckling. It still has Touch ID in the top right corner to unlock your Mac, and of course, typing on this Mac, just like any other modern Mac, is a dream. The keyboard feels great, the trackpad is super premium, and again, the overall build quality on this laptop is just insane. There is no other laptop, in my opinion, that feels as solid and as well built as these new MacBook Pros, and every aspect of it feels precision engineered. Like even the etching on the bottom that says MacBook Pro not only looks beautiful, it feels beautiful when you run your finger across it. Small details like this, to me at least, make me appreciate the product a whole lot more, and every time I pick this up, I'm just reminded how premium of an experience this actually is. So in terms of build quality compared to the MacBook Pro it's replacing, it's a huge upgrade. And it's not just build quality improvements, you're getting expanded consumer level features as well. I think the best is that new expanded 14-inch display, which just has less bezels around the entire display. And not only is the display bigger and just kind of looks better because of those reduced bezels, but it's also a huge upgrade in screen technology. This features a 120 Hz display refresh rate, which makes everything you do, from simple things like just moving the mouse cursor to scrolling in websites, animations, and if you're playing games that can hit higher than 60 frames per second, you get ultra smooth looking gameplay as well. Like the new display somehow makes your old Mac feel slow if you don't have a fast refresh rate Mac. And that really has nothing to do with performance, it's just the refresh rate on the display. The visual quality of the display is also one of the best in any laptop because of the mini-LED technology. This uses an LCD panel, but instead of like big backlight LEDs, it uses 10,000 smaller mini LEDs that can be turned on or off in controlled zones. Why does this matter? Well, that means the display can turn off the zones in darker areas of the picture or increase the brightness of a zone for brighter areas in the picture. This results not only in deeper black levels, but the display can reach an amazing 1600 nits of peak brightness during HDR playback for a really impressive amount of dynamic range when you're watching HDR video. And that, those black levels for those darker zones just means like when you take the whole dynamic range into context, you're getting a 1,000,000 to 1 contrast ratio. And on scientific terms, this display is amazing. It is hands down the best laptop display I have used overall for a combination of high resolution, refresh rate, black levels, brightness, and HDR capabilities. When I look at like other like high-end Windows laptops in these categories, like they usually check like a few checkboxes, right? Like it'll usually have either high resolution or like a bright display or like a really good contrast ratio. But it's very rare to find something that really just checks every single box. And this MacBook Pro does it. I'm telling you, when you see this display, it's hard to go back to something else. Now, this isn't new, right? These are upgrades that have been on the more expensive Pro and Max models of the MacBook Pro for the past 2 years, but now they're here at the entry-level model. And that's important because it means you no longer have to spend $2,000 to get a MacBook that actually has more ports or one with such an excellent display as this one. But listen, $1,600 isn't exactly what I would classify as low cost or even entry-level, but is this value here better than the older MacBook Pro? That's kind of the thing I wanted to answer, and I think it is, and that's partly because of the starting specification of this MacBook Pro, which starts with 512 gigabytes of storage, which is double the previous starting storage found on the M2 MacBook Pro. So if you did the same storage upgrade on that MacBook Pro, well, this MacBook Pro is actually only $100 more expensive. So when you account for all the upgrades you're getting for this model for $100 more, that is a very little price increase for such a huge quality of life upgrade to a lot of these features. But again, we also have to kind of temper our expectations down a little bit because despite this kind of taking on the starting role of the 14-inch MacBook Pro, it isn't a direct replacement of those higher end models because this doesn't come with the heavy-hitting M3 Pro or M3 Max chips found on those more expensive models. Just like the previous M2 model it replaces, it comes with a non-Pro branded M3 chip, and at $1,600, the big question is, can this lower-end M3 chip really hold its own against powerful laptop chips in its price category? Well, the silicon here is actually really impressive. Single-core performance is pretty much the highest you're going to get on any laptop or desktop in the world right now, and it's an impressive bump even over the previous M2 chip with around a 15% performance gain. Multi-core performance is also an impressive jump up, and it's holding its own against the previous $2,000 base model M2 Pro chip, so the value for performance here is pretty good. The flaws of the M3 chip are kind of like they've always been for any of the base level chips. The GPU performance just isn't there. Despite some additions like hardware ray tracing, these base M3 chips still aren't GPU workhorses. Still, if you can find games that are optimized for Apple Silicon, like Resident Evil Village, you can actually get some pretty decent graphics quality and some stable frame rates for titles like Resident Evil Village. But again, titles like Resident Evil Village that are actually optimized for the Mac and can take advantage of Apple Silicon are very few and far between, I'll just say. There's not that many of them available on the Mac. And then for other GPU-heavy workloads like 3D modeling and Blender and stuff like that, like this isn't the machine you want. But still, going with the regular M3 chip does have its perks, and that is with efficiency and battery life gains. Like when we're talking about a consumer level laptop, this thing is amazing. During my whole month testing this machine, it has never gotten hot, and I have never heard the fan spin up on it once with my workloads. And the battery life on this lower end model is actually more than Apple's more expensive 14-inch M3 Pro and M3 Max models, and it matches the battery performance of the ultra expensive 16-inch MacBook Pro, which has a way bigger battery in it. But because the chip is so efficient, despite having a smaller battery, it actually gets that same 22-hour battery life rating. Now, in real world usage, this battery life rating is probably closer to around maybe like 15 to maybe like 20 hours of real world usage on this MacBook Pro. Again, it's very dependent on what tasks you're doing. But again, battery life on this is fantastic. It'll easily last you through a day. And then standby time is also really good. Like you can close this up, come back to it days later, and it's still gonna hold a charge pretty close to where you left it. And that, experience of just having all this battery life on a laptop, not having to worry about charging it, really just leads to a great experience with this machine. Now, all that's great. And honestly, a lot of the things I talked about this laptop are great, especially for that $1,600 price point. I really think this is a good laptop. And honestly, the M3 chip, it's performant. It belongs in this pro level laptop, but that's not really the issue for me here. The issue here, and this is kind of like the elephant in the room that we really didn't discuss yet, is that 8 GB of starting memory for this configuration. Now, I want to keep this short, and I want to just kind of tailor my recommendations in the shortest way possible. The performance for the 8 GB in this machine surprised me. It was actually pretty good. I ingested some of the footage here. I actually walked away for a bit and started editing this video, doing the first draft here, and it performed pretty well. Now, listen, I've been reviewing Apple Silicon machines for like 3 years now, so I know how maybe like the limitations of this system. And I was like, okay, this is actually doing better than I remember. But as I ingested more footage into it, as I put multiple streams of 4K, as I extended the project to around like 40 minutes in length, then I could see dropped frames. I could see that the system was having trouble with the memory pressure. So, is 8 GB a miracle, and is it gonna be fine for every workflow? Of course not. There's a reason why Apple sells higher end configurations with more memory. That's not a scam, right? More memory is gonna mean better performance, especially when you're using higher end applications. But if you're doing basic tasks on this model, and I really think this model in particular, this base level model, is gonna appeal to people that, would be fine with a MacBook Air, but want features like the better screen. Maybe they want the bigger 14-inch screen. Maybe they want more ports. Maybe they want the better speakers, right? You're getting a lot here, especially with the increase in starting storage, that when you look at it compared to a MacBook Air, it's not that much more money to step up to this sometimes, right? And that's great. But also for pro level users who are thinking, maybe I'm gonna get like a super good deal on this model, I would say there's some caution here. And it's really dependent on your workflow. There might be some people that could buy this laptop, and if you're not doing anything that's super intensive, even like as like a pro level user, like maybe you're just like editing like short form video or something like that, maybe you'd be fine with 8 GB. But I think the safe recommendation here is to really bump it up to 16 GB, just spend that $200 extra, because not only is this machine gonna be better for today for a lot of projects that you do with it, but it's gonna be better for tomorrow, right? Like, don't forget, we're buying these laptops not to last a year, we're buying them to last multiple years, hopefully, and every other part of this laptop should age beautifully. That I really feel like the limiting factor here for demanding users is that memory. So $200 extra, upgrade that memory, brings up to $1,800. Is it still a great laptop at that price point? Absolutely. Maybe you should look at higher end configs as well, right? Like they got that M3 Pro model for $2,000. Again, now you're spending $400 more to upgrade to that model. That's personal preference. There's some advantages going for the system, like the better battery life, but there's disadvantages too, right? That M3 Pro is gonna have a faster CPU, a faster GPU. It can connect to 2 external displays at once. It can only connect to 1 external display at once, right? So there's pros and cons for spending more money, obviously. But I think the big takeaway here is that this system is great for people that kind of want an upgraded MacBook Air experience. And it's also great for pro level users who are maybe a little bit more on a budget. And I think it's a better machine than that M2 MacBook Pro, which just felt so out of place in the lineup. So do I recommend this base model MacBook Pro? I do. But again, you kind of have to configure it and see if it's really right for you. All right, hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please give me a like. If you want to see more from the channel, make sure you're subscribed. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.